Hello and welcome to the Crypto Sky podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. We've got another great episode today. I recently conducted an interview with Crypto OJ Simpson. He's a trader, investor, and miner in the crypto space, and he's a really cool dude. Unfortunately, we had some issues with our connection and actually recording the podcast, but we fought through the difficulties and hopefully delivered an episode that you guys will enjoy and learn something from. We covered everything from trading during a bull run and taking profits to how to get started in mining and staking. As always, if you guys would like to support the podcast, there are a couple of things you can do. First of all, you can share it via social media. And second of all, if you're listening on iTunes, please leave a review and make sure to subscribe. I hope you guys enjoy this episode. Let's get to it. Hello, Crypto OJ Simpson. I want to welcome you to the podcast and thank you for joining. We had a little difficult start, but we're here now and we're ready to rock.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. We made it. Let's do this.
All right. So just kind of start off with telling us how you got into crypto.
I was working with some guys who were pretty into crypto. This was like back in 2014 or so. And they decided that they were going to get into mining full time. And it was mostly Bitcoin, but some other stuff as well. They quit and talked me into investing in their mining company, and I did that. And I didn't really do much else for several years for that. I just kind of held the Bitcoin and watched it go. But it took a few years after, so about 2016 or so, when stuff started heating up, it got me a little more interested. But that was the start.
Okay, so kind of touch on what really kind of captured you. You know, was it the big gains, or what really got you?
Well, for me, when it started perking up, for a long time there, we were in the 200s and 300s, and things were looking pretty bleak. It didn't, Bitcoin that is, but anyway, I wasn't really paying attention to it much. I didn't really care. And when it started picking up, it looked like there was some potential for something to happen. So that's when I kind of started taking it more seriously.
Okay. And then just kind of tell us how you got the name, Crypto OJ Simpson.
Okay, well, so on Twitter for a while there, I was actually going by a different name. And I don't know. I just, at some point, I decided I was looking around and I saw I had a football autograph by OJ Simpson, and at first my name was Crypto J, just crypto with a J at the end.
Okay.
And so somehow it clicked in my head. It was like, oh, that's Crypto J. If you just kind of mash them together, yeah, it's like, oh, like Crypto J Simpson. But the football kind of made me put that together.
Okay, definitely. So, do you have an investing or a tech background, or was all this new to you?
A little bit of investing, nothing too serious, but a little bit of real estate, precious metals, things like that. But if somebody had an idea, I'd hear them out, but not like stocks or Forex or anything like that.
Okay. So, kind of go over just your general trading strategy. Do you prefer more long-term investments or like short-term trades?
Both. If you've got like a small cap where you see a lot of upside, maybe not right away, but something you feel confident about holding for a while. I like those a lot. You can scoop it up and sit on it for a while, but I also like high cap alts, things with high liquidity to fiat, so you can sell if whenever you want. You can ditch your entire bag, or you can buy as much as you want.
Okay, definitely. And so a lot of people are kind of saying this is the start of alt season. What are your thoughts on that?
That's kind of the $1 million question. To me, the bags that I'm in, I'm not looking for anything that's a quick pump or something like that. So alt season to me is sort of irrelevant.
Okay.
So it doesn't matter to me too much if it is or it isn't. So I don't really pay attention too much to it.
Okay, so when you're looking at a coin and you're thinking about investing or trading, do you prefer or do you focus more on fundamentals or more of a TA or hype setup?
Fundamentals are big, especially in low caps. You make way more money trading FA on low caps. I'll generally have like one or two super low caps that are just a lot of time spent talking to the team, hanging out in the Discord, seeing what they're doing, watching them follow through. That's why, I see these people that have like tons of low caps. I don't know how you have the time to do that. Like, I think as far as trading, if you're trading like high cap alts or Bitcoin, TA definitely, but.
Okay, yeah. So, a lot of people are saying this is alt season. So just kind of touch on how a new investor or a new trader, trying to give them advice on actually taking profits because a lot of people are unsure of when to get out of a trade.
Okay. Yeah. So if you're buying now, that's what makes it kind of tough because people try to buy right when alt season starts or they're buying on a pump or something like that. And that makes it really hard to stay in profit. So if you accumulate before alt season, then you don't really have to worry about it too much. And if you're playing like high alts, stuff like that, where or high cap alts, where you don't really have to worry about finding enough to, fill your orders and stuff. If you're trading high cap alts and stuff like that, then you don't have to worry about it as much. And the cool thing about that is if you're trading a cap or a coin with plenty of liquidity, you can take 20% profit. And if it looks like it's going to break out again, then you can buy back in and go again. I know it's, a lot of people are afraid of taxes and stuff like that. And, how that all works out. And it does get complicated. But, I'd rather pay taxes and lock in my gains and sit and hold a bag that's underwater.
Yeah. And that's a good point you kind of mentioned. A lot of people fall victim to FOMO, especially new investors. Just kind of touch on that and maybe give some tips to some new investors to not fall victim to that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like my general rule is if people are talking about it on Twitter, I kind of stay away from it, and that's bit me in the butt more than once because there's a lot of times that people are talking about stuff that's good, but at the same time, it's just not worth the risk for me. So, the idea is you want to preserve your capital and keep moving forward. So if you're taking a risk that's not worth it, just for gains that are hypothetical or could happen based on somebody else's research, you're just opening yourself up to lose money, and you just don't want to enter into a trade that has a higher probability of you losing money than making money. And that's generally what happens, especially when you're buying on a upswing, unless you really know what you're doing, that's really hard to time.
Yeah.
So I think if you're new, you should definitely stay away from your low caps and stick to your high caps, and don't be afraid of taking small amounts of profit and rebuying if it looks good.
Okay, and then so kind of touch on this. When people are getting into trading, they don't know whether to trade based on U.S. dollar value or Bitcoin value. Kind of give your thoughts on that.
Okay, so I do both, like Litecoin and Ethereum. I'll trade those in USDs quite a bit, but like your coins that don't have any liquidity to USD, it's not doing you any good. So, you want to chart it off BTC. You want to count your gains in BTC. The US dollar price is, it's a good metric if you want to feel good about yourself. If you're watching your alt bag bleed out in BTC, but BTC is going on a run, you can just switch it over and voila, you're a genius. But it's kind of stroking your own ego and it doesn't really get you anywhere. So I try, I do both, but only where it makes sense.
Okay. So are you long-term bullish on Bitcoin or, what are your thoughts on long-term Bitcoin?
Bitcoin proper. Yeah. I think Bitcoin, I'm still super bullish on Bitcoin. I think we've got upside on it. I don't know what that looks like or when it'll be, but we're in a clear accumulation here.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think we do have another leg up. historically that's taken some time in the past, but
Okay, and then so Bitcoin, is more of a currency. Kind of touch on your thoughts on more business platforms like maybe a Dragon Chain or an Ethereum, something like that. Are you long-term bullish on those as well?
yeah, Ethereum's, maybe you can't say it too loud, but it might be my favorite coin.
Okay.
I see a lot of upside in Ethereum and platforms like it. I think, but the problem with Ethereum and ERC20 tokens in general is I think a lot of those type of tokens that don't provide any actual utility other than payment for a service could just be a service paid for in Ethereum, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, like ADX, for example, or something that provides a service paid with this token could just accept Ethereum as payment and be a valid business. But the ICO idea wrapped around the token is how they're raising money. And I think that's one of the things that we'll see change. So your platforms that offer utility for those companies to raise funds through smart contracts, I think will evolve into that sort of model where maybe they're not issuing a token, but acting more like a stock in a way, like you're buying shares in this company or whatever.
Okay.
Rather than buying a token, because the gas, the exchange, everything is kind of a pain in the butt with ERC20 tokens. So I see that evolving, but I don't know quite what it looks like.
Okay, so and then you mentioned you're a fan of Ethereum. Kind of touch on your thoughts of the scalability issue with Ethereum.
Yeah, I mean that's of course it's always present. I think I think we're in early iterations of everything. I don't think necessarily Bitcoin or Ethereum will be your main standards forever. It's clearly just blazing the trail, and they could evolve to adapt to that, or something else could take their place. I mean, I don't necessarily see either one of those holding the top spot forever, just because of the problems you mentioned, but. The technology's just starting out, and I keep an open mind, just try to see what the new projects are doing, how they're improving. And most of the time we see these coins adapt.
All right, so we kind of touched on, Ethereum, and a project that's very similar that has a lot of hype right now is Chain. So kind of touch on your thoughts on Chain.
I haven't been tracking Chain at all. I don't know anything about it.
Okay. Okay, so just kind of give us a couple projects that maybe fundamentally you're really excited about, but maybe don't have a big name yet.
Vertcoin. I think Vertcoin, is something that's always been floating around the top 100, and it'll pop up and down occasionally, but it's sort of floating in that middle of the road area. But they're working really hard to get liquidity to USD through their own exchanges. They've got Vertbase and Vertpig in the UK and European countries and stuff. So they're working really hard to do that stuff. So it's a fork of Litecoin that when they were having the debate of whether to switch to or whether to allow ASICs or not, the guys from the Vertcoin team said no, and they're running a lot more decentralized. And I think, I think that's sort of where we're moving, is away from the that sort of debate.
All right, so we're gonna switch gears here, and you mentioned ASIC miners. Just kind of for someone who's really new to mining, just kind of talk about how you got into mining. You mentioned your friends. Just kind of talk about how you got your first setup and how you kind of got rolling.
Yeah, so like I said, I invested in a company that was mining Bitcoin, and that was sort of my intro into it, and that eventually fizzled away, and it's no longer a thing. But so when I started buying my own rigs and putting together my own rigs, I was a lot more focused on GPUs. I mainly GPU mine. I have a few ASICs, but I'm not really into mining ASIC coins. But the long and short of it is, it started off small. I got a couple GPUs, put them together, and figured out how to make it work, and slowly evolved from there.
Okay. So you mentioned an ASIC miner. For someone who's maybe new or not sure, kind of touch on the differences between an ASIC and a GPU miner.
Yeah, so an ASIC is a application-specific integrated circuit. So it's a machine made specifically for mining a certain algorithm. The big ones are for Litecoin, Bitcoin. They made one for Dash, but that's basically all they can do is mine the algorithms that those coins run in. So there's some spillover into other coins, but ultimately they're only for mining crypto. So a GPU is just a graphics card, and they have other uses outside of crypto mining.
Yep. Okay, so this is kind of the big debate in the mining world. Do you believe it's still profitable to kind of begin mining Bitcoin right now?
Bitcoin, probably not. Not to branch into it anyway. There's a pretty big corner on that market. I mean, but that said, people are still doing it, and they're buying ASICs and running them in areas where they have low power costs, and maybe they're making some money. But the problem is, you've got the centralized manufacturing of these ASICs. So you've got Bitmain, and now you've got Dragon Mint or whatever that one is that just came out, and they've got choke points on these miners where they're only letting so much out. And like in Bitmain's case, they're keeping a bunch and mining themselves. They're sort of playing you against yourself in a way, right?
Definitely.
I mean, you're buying these miners, and they're taking their profits and buying more, raising the hash rate, and you're sort of you're fighting against each other because the hash rate's going up, your profitability is going down, and the math doesn't quite add up in my head. Whereas with GPUs, we're dealing with multiple manufacturers that aren't directly into crypto yet, although that's changing. It's just slightly, I don't know, in my mind, it feels slightly better.
Yeah, I understand. So you're just saying it's more of an uphill battle, where it's gotten kind of centralized.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. So kind of touch on, do you mine any other coins beside Bitcoin?
I actually don't mine any Bitcoin other than rigs that I have rented on NiceHash. So I'll use NiceHash. That pays out in Bitcoin for some NVIDIA miners that I have. But mostly, yeah, I just mine alts for the most part.
Okay, so what are a couple of your favorite alts to mine?
So right now I'm mining mostly Ethereum, ZEC, and Pinkcoin.
Okay. So, you're into mining. Do you do any staking as well, or are you strictly mining?
Yeah, I love the staking's great. I think I'm staking several coins. I like, it's just great to just have the coin sitting there, and it's multiplying in front of your eyes, and sell it when it's high. It just follows the same rules as mining, basically.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
in some cases is a lot more profitable than mining.
Yeah. So, to someone who's maybe new and wants to stake, what would be 2 or 3 tips you would maybe, give them?
Okay, so there's just tons of staking coins, right? And you're
Yeah.
looking at ROIs, and you're trying to figure out, oh, this one's got 100% ROI, so that's the one I want to get into, and blah blah blah. But for me, it's a lot more important when you're looking at a staking coin that the actual value of that coin is going to go up, that it's a good project rather than the ROI, because the ROI doesn't really mean anything if the coin's worthless. So, that's sort of the first common mistake that I always hear people say is like, oh, well, that's only got a 5% ROI on the masternode or whatever. It's like, well, yeah, but the coin's going to be worth a lot more than your coin that has 1,000% ROI. That's, the supply is now growing faster than demand.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So just more to find good projects and not worry as much about the return percentage.
Yeah, I mean, it's a concern. It's something you should look at. If the rewards are terrible, it may not even be worth your time. But to stake, maybe you're just buying the coin and holding the coin. But so the return obviously does matter, but it should be secondary.
Okay. So do you have any experience with a Raspberry Pi, or have you built maybe a staking computer, or what are your thoughts on that?
I used a Raspberry Pi to stake Pinkcoin for a while. It took a little bit of finagling. They're all sort of working on their own custom staking boxes now, or most of these coins are in one way or another. But yeah, I've used the Raspberry Pi for Pinkcoin for quite a while, and it's just kind of nice because you can, have your computer go to sleep or whatever, and it's just running.
Yeah, that's something I think I'm actually planning on purchasing a Raspberry and then beginning to stake some different coins. So, I kind of think that's a good entry point for someone who's into staking. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. But, the thing about staking coins is you got to consider, a lot of them have a lot of different time frames of when you're going to start receiving stakes or weight that's gained on them, how long that takes to actually see gains. So a lot of people, they'll grab a coin for a couple of weeks and say, I'm not getting any ROI on it. It's not worth it. So, you really got to dig into it. And not only that, in some cases, getting it set up, especially if you're doing like a Raspberry Pi setup, there's not, the wallets aren't compiled for those operating systems in a lot of cases. So you got to kind of do it yourself. There's a lot of work, a lot of effort that goes into that if you're not well versed, and there's no clear cut, you can't just Google, how do I set up my Raspberry Pi for staking XYZ shitcoin,
Yeah,
it just
definitely.
doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So you got to be able to dig into it and do it. So, if you find a couple of projects that you like and you want to put your time into it, then it's definitely worth it.
Okay, definitely. All right, so outside of crypto, are you still invested in real estate or do you have any other investments?
Right now, no, I'm kind of winding down.
Okay.
I'm hoping, yeah, I'm staying relatively focused on crypto right now. Ever since the bull run started, that's pretty much taken up most of my time.
Okay. So do you full-time trade or do you have a job as well?
No, I've got a day job too. So it's, pretty time consuming.
Yeah, I understand. So kind of touch on how you manage to balance your lifestyle with having a family and trading crypto and then also having your day job.
Yeah, it's really difficult. I mean, you gotta compartmentalize each thing. It's really easy to be doing something with your family or your kids and you pull out your phone to check your portfolio and it's like, oh, this is mooning. I got to sell it now. So I got to run home and do it. So it's really tough. So,
Yeah.
You just kind of start to learn how to set your sales, put your targets on the books and just kind of let it do its thing.
Yeah.
I mean, you just don't worry about it as much in the micro swings. And I mean, that's my best advice because, for a long time, I was a lot more focused on grabbing every swing in the price channel and trying to maximize my profits and all that stuff. And for one, it doesn't really ever work out perfect anyway.
Yeah.
So you're trying to split hairs when you're kind of missing the bigger picture. So, if you just can't do everything. So you gotta compartmentalize and figure out which time is meant for which thing and then just stick to it. And that's the way it is.
Okay. So what are some things outside of crypto and your work that you enjoy doing?
I'm into baseball. I like
Okay.
baseball and,
Who's your
watching
favorite
baseball,
team?
playing baseball. That's fighting words for most people. So I try to stay away from that.
Okay, I
Pretty
understand.
non-partial, but I accidentally posted a picture that had a baseball cap in it. And that started like World War III on my Twitter page. So if you dig deep
understand.
enough, you could probably find it.
Okay. Okay, so you enjoy baseball. So, and this is something that I talked with Peter McCormick a little bit about when I interviewed him. Kind of touch on, this is something we mentioned earlier, how difficult it is to get into crypto. You have to be very tech savvy. You have to have a lot of time. Kind of touch on how difficult it is.
It's really weird that you mentioned that because I've been talking to a couple of people recently that have so many questions and where they generally wind up hung up on is like the FUD, like just I read the story that said it's going to zero, and I read this sort of this doom and gloom article, so now I'm afraid and I don't want to do it. And I don't like talking people into it because I don't want to be responsible, So
Yeah, I understand.
right, so it's a difficult thing when somebody says, well, I don't want to get into it, and I just kind of say, okay. But I think it's really hard when people are just focusing on these news stories, and that's what generally people do. So, that's a big part of it. You've got to make it up in your mind that this is what you want to do. And I think it's really important when you're talking to somebody who's going through that or trying to make that decision that you don't influence them, at least,
Yeah.
because you don't want that on your back. You don't want to be, facilitating their decisions, because it's ultimately up to them. So, I think that's the biggest obstacle for the new trader to overcome, is just the FUD. And because if you want to do it and you believe in it, all those other things, you can spend the time and learn.
Yeah.
But most people get scared. So it's, I think that's actually the biggest obstacle to the new trader.
Okay. So how can us as community members kind of help those new people out without maybe swaying them? They want to get into crypto, but maybe they have different opinions. How can us as community members help them?
Well, I just tell my story. I can't tell you everybody else's story, so I'll just tell you my experience with it. And I was invested, and it was a long time before I saw a return on my investment. but when I did, it was pretty awesome. And it wasn't overnight, it wasn't something that you just buy tomorrow and then, you buy one Bitcoin today and you buy a Lambo tomorrow. That's just not how it works. But that's sort of the mindset that's sold. And I think that's why it's so hard to overcome. So when you start talking to people in rational terms like that, I think you have a higher likelihood of getting them interested in crypto.
Okay, definitely. Yeah, I agree. And then, so a lot of new people, want to join a paid group, or, there's been some arguments on Twitter about whether paid groups are, legit and whether they're good. And this is something I've found that's probably a good idea for new people, is maybe to just get a group of your friends that enjoy trading crypto and kind of start your own group and not have it paid and not have it this. Just you can kind of bounce ideas off of. Is that something you do, and what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I've got my own private group. It's not a paid group, but it kind of started out organically like that, of just, these are my friends and we're joking around.
Yeah.
But, one person learns something and you just sort of add to the community in that way. But I've also taken part in groups that were that started that way and turned paid, because they got so big that it was hard to limit the membership. So when people start realizing that, they say, "Oh, I could make money off this. This is a value. This is a valuable commodity. People want this," so they start charging for it. So in all cases, it's not necessarily bad. A lot of the paid groups grew that same way. So we're bashing them for being successful.
Yeah, I agree.
For doing the things that we kind of all are aspiring to do. So that said, I mean, I think. I don't know if it's true or not, but I did see that, I think it was Phil Cone was advertising a paid group that had a $50,000 entry.
Wow.
And I kind of look at that and I laugh. Like, if you're starting a paid group, you're just starting it, right? And that's what the entry is. You don't have any reputation outside of that other than Twitter. It's like, well, why does that have any value, or especially that amount? I don't really know. So, there are some obvious paid group scams out there. I mean, that goes without saying. But, if you look at some of the more reputable ones, it's like, well, this is a group with 5,000 people in it that charges, $20 a month or something like that. It's like, well, if you're getting valuable information from it, I don't think that's a scam.
Okay. So, you kind of talk about your learning process, and then also kind of touch on what new traders and investors some resources they can use to really learn, whether it be TA or fundamentals or whatever it is.
Yeah, I think too oftentimes we're focused on like the master call, like the nailing the very bottom and the very top, and getting the last 10% perfect. And that's not really, that's something that people go on the search for the paid group, or go on the search for this special indicator on TradingView that shows you this, that, and the other. When you're first starting out, you can't master that, and you can't learn all that. So you gotta focus on just really basic fundamentals and price channels, and just kind of understanding where the approximate bottom is, and you get the historical charts. But we try to overcomplicate it so much that, and we're kind of chasing something that we can't really find.
Definitely, yeah.
So, you just keep it simple, and don't necessarily look to just anybody. Like you said, I think all the best stuff I've learned has been from my friends
Yeah.
and just our experiences and talking and, going over what works and what doesn't work. Because I'm not going to tell you what works for me because I don't know that it'll work for you, So you got to sort of adapt your own style and not really adhere to somebody else's book. And the only way that really comes is with experience. So.
And something I really tell, new people or some of my friends that are kind of getting into it is number one, just slow down and look at the overall market cycle. And then number
Right.
two, just kind of develop your own strategy. So kind of touch on how someone, can maybe develop their strategy.
Well, I think you got to figure out what your goals are, and then gauge if they're realistic. So people go into these trades like not knowing when they're going to sell, not knowing how much they're going to buy or, what intervals they're going to sell it. So I think, you got to have a clear outline before you buy. This is my buy. This is how much I want to buy. This is how much I can afford to buy. This is my tentative sale, and then just stick to it. Yeah, that's so. If you overcomplicate it and you're trying to, right now it looks super bullish and it's feeling super good, and it could go to, 10x instead of 5x. That's when you start making those mistakes, when you abandon the plan that you set out before you buy. So that would be kind of my main tip there, is just set your plan before you buy. And if you don't have a plan, then don't buy.
Yeah, just have a game plan. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think when you go from there, you can kind of, adapt it always evolves, right? From there, you're kind of changing. Like I'm going to buy this micro cap that I think I could sell in 6 months. So that this percent of my portfolio can be dedicated to that. It just sort of evolves and starts falling into place when you start setting those plans like that.
Yeah. So taking more of a long-term perspective, what's maybe a sector, whether it be a privacy coin or actual platforms like Ethereum, what are you long-term the most bullish on, or maybe currency?
Yeah, I think decentralized privacy coins, if you can match those together, it's even better. Single, if you can get a decentralized coin that's really good, I think that's the way we're going to move.
Okay. So I know this is a difficult question, but you personally, where do you see crypto and then overall blockchain technology being in 5 to 10 years?
I think it's going to be in a place where we can't even imagine it right now. Like what we've asked people to do is project what Bitcoin will do or what Ethereum will do or how these things will sort of change the space or whatever. But, you got to remember with the internet and computers and stuff, nobody could imagine the phone.
Yeah.
Or the smartphone, and the way that sort of revolutionized the way we do everything in technology. So I think it would be, there's obviously really smart people who are really plugged in who could make pretty good educated guesses. But I think the technology will be so far advanced, just with the amount of money and interest that's flowing into it, that it'll be vaguely recognizable to what it is today.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so you mentioned blockchain. Where do you personally want to be in 5 to 10 years? Maybe a full-term crypto, retired, whatever it may be.
Yeah, definitely retired.
Okay.
That sounds great. Like, trading crypto is fun, and this is really interesting being involved in the space. But, it's also a lot of hard work, and people sort of write that off of, oh, you're making money and it's going good for you, so boo-hoo, cry me a river. But I don't want to be doing this for 10 years. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, I understand. All right, man. Well, that's all the questions I have lined up, so I'll kind of let you just touch on your closing thoughts, and we'll wrap it up.
All right. Well, yeah, thanks for having me. I think it's pretty cool that you're doing this project, and I think that's what's pretty exciting about this space. We're seeing a lot of people just go out there and do it and see if it works. And if it continues to work, it's cool. If not, you'll try the next thing. It's sort of the group of people that we're attracting here. So, I'm really optimistic and really excited for the space and see what happens next.
That's all for the episode, guys. I hope you enjoyed this interview and really learned something from it. I'd like to take a minute and just say thank you to everyone who has listened to the podcast and supported it in any way. I plan to continue to grow this podcast and the community. That's all for this week, and I'll catch you guys on the next episode.